Hello, everybody, and welcome in live to the 73rd edition of Texas Longhorns Live. I really appreciate you guys joining us. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below, and let's jump right into things. So Texas obviously gets a big win down in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl, 23-6 over Oklahoma. 3 out of the last 4 years, Oklahoma has failed to reach the red zone, and now Steve Sarkisian is 3-1 versus Brent Venables. Gerald, what did you like about this game overall from the Longhorns' perspective?
I mean, what was not to like about it? I think, there is a lot to be happy about. I was looking at the stats, and this was the lowest passing output by a quarterback since Gerard Hurd in 2015. Texas ran for like 4,000 yards in that game, basically. But what I liked about it was Arch Manning in a lot of ways, because it may not have been the flashiest, all-time performance in the Red River game, but I think Arch and Sark are finally in a rhythm where they know what they need from each other, right? Where Sark knows how to call a game for Arch to put him in position to be successful, and Arch knows how to play within what Sark is asking him to do. And when it is time to make one of those flashy all-time plays, he does it, right? Really, he played within the offense quite a bit, took the check down. You never go broke making a profit. And then when it's 3rd and 19 and you need to get something going, he rolls right, evades a tackler, fires it down the sideline to the only spot Parker Livingston can get to it, and Livingston comes up with a massive conversion to keep them out of the shadow of their end zone, to keep that drive moving. And I believe that ended up with a field goal on that drive. So like that kind of stuff is what I liked to see, because again, it wasn't flashy. It wasn't, all sorts of, world beater from the quarterback, but with the level of defense Texas played in that game, it's closer to what I think we'll expect to see from them for the rest of the year. And so like, if Arch can just be good, right, this is a team that can win most, if not all, of the games left on the schedule, because the defense is so good. We just need Arch and the offense to not suck. And they finally found a way to not just not suck, but be good enough to be a plus.
No, 100%. And I think that's the thing. I mean, we've been talking about this on the show since the Ohio State game, how we believe this team has to win. I think Steve Sarkisian has finally figured out and looked at the team and said, hey, we can't win the way I want to. We can still do some things I want to do, but we're not going to be able to throw deep. We're not going to be able to run power on this team, really. It's going to have to, resort to the old ways of, inside and outside zone, which we'll have to see about the outside zone if that works versus other teams, because the way Oklahoma plays their defensive line, it worked versus them, and it has worked versus them. Versus other teams, it may not work, but I think the formula is don't make mistakes and keep yourself in the game with the lack of mistakes, because your defense is a top 5 unit in the country on that side of the ball. So that's really positive thing. And then the yards per target down the field, I believe it was like 4.8. Now, do I think that needs to go, or depth of target? I think that needs to go a little bit more. I'm thinking 5.5 to 6.5, honestly, but I'm cool with them, obviously pushing that down quite a bit, because you can't have these long developing routes with this offensive line. Yes, they did play better, but they still aren't to the point where you can have 15, 20-yard plays down the field. The one time we tried to do that in this game, guess what? Gooseby got beat and we had a sack. So you can't do that. I do agree in this game versus Kentucky, you might be able to get away with it versus a little bit more, because I'm going to be honest with you guys, when we get into it, I think there's Alabama, there's Kentucky, and there's a whole lot in the middle here. And we're going to be playing the worst team in the SEC this week, so you might be able to get away with it a little more, but I don't want consistent deep shots. I don't want 10-plus deep shots in this game. But overall, in this OU game, I thought they called a really good game on both sides of the ball. It was awesome to see Trey Wisner finally get going. Mm-hmm. I need to see Trey Wisner stack games, because he's done this before. We've seen him do it last year, but he hasn't been consistent, and that's been the biggest thing with me is I don't think he'd be a number one back on a championship team, because those guys are super consistent backs. He hasn't been. Yeah. He's been really good performance followed up by an average or bad performance. So we need to start stacking these up with Trey Wisner.
For sure. And to your point about the depth of target on the offense, they really didn't take a ton of shots. They had 2 shots, I think, on routes that were longer than 15 yards. Now, Arch was 2 for 2 on those. So that's a good sign, right? He didn't have to do a lot, but he did it. But really, when you look at it, Texas played a lot of the guys at the Solid Verbal call it like a pickleball offense, where you're kind of playing very small. He was 15 of 15 from 5 yards and shorter, which is, again, what they asked him to do. They're getting the ball out of his hands quickly, kind of, those quick slants, some RPOs, the screen game, that kind of stuff, where that was what Texas needed to do to take advantage, because frankly, Oklahoma had the advantage in the trenches. And so they did a lot of that quick developing stuff to get that defense to where they were tired, right? They did a lot. That defensive line did a lot of running. And so then when you get to the third and fourth quarter, now that advantage is not there. So Texas can lean on you a bit and do a little bit more running. And so you see that in the numbers. But I think the other piece that we have to like talk about, I keep coming back to is like I think the edges are finally figuring out like what to do. And I think Pete Kwiatkowski has really figured out like, it's okay. Like he's not the most aggressive defensive coordinator. He did a lot in this game, a lot more than we've seen, I think, probably honestly, in most of the years that Pete Kwiatkowski's been at Texas. But we saw that the defense really thrived on it. Yeah, especially late. When Mateer is actually having to drop back and throw it, he harassed that dude. It was a night and day difference from last week. And so like that to me is a signal of like, I hope these guys are really getting into the rhythm of like, hey, Colin Simmons, you're that dude, right? And Colin Simmons this was his first sack against a Power 5 opponent this year, a Power 4 opponent, I guess. So like, but 2.5 of them, right, is a massive outing for him. So, being able to get back in the rhythm. And again, we talked about it with Arch, and I think it may be with these guys as well. Like Colin Simmons just flat beat Michael Fasusi, who's supposed to be one of the better tackles in the country, right? So like that to me is a guy, like that's a guy getting his swagger back. That's a guy getting back into the rhythm of things. Getting Manny Muhammad back didn't hurt. It made the secondary look a whole lot better than it did 2 weeks ago. So again, I think overall, it seems like Texas has figured out maybe what the formula is to win. It's not going to look the same or even what like what Sark wanted it to look like, but they figured out their formula.
No, 100%. I think that's super important to, have an identity. And if you look around the country, there's not a lot of teams with an identity right now. Like, I think that's part of the reason you don't see an elite team right now in college football. I think you can make the argument for Miami and Ohio State, but after that, there isn't one. There are a bunch of good, solid football teams, and the SP Plus that came out by Bill Connolly yesterday proved that of how the average teams have jumped up to the good, and the great teams have jumped down to the good as well. So you have this bundle of 35 to 40 teams every week that could beat each other. And I think that's healthy for the sport, but it also makes it interesting because Oklahoma kind of has the same issue. Their fans are talking about what is their offensive identity coming out of this game. They don't have one either. And if you look around the country, there's even less offenses that have identities. Like the only teams that I watch and say, I know what the identity of that team is offensively are honestly probably Miami and Alabama. Even Ohio State is struggling with that a little bit. So Texas is in a better position, obviously, coming out of this game, but also establishing an identity. That was more important than getting the win, in my opinion, because if you don't have an identity, this team's going nowhere. But I think we know it now. Arch just needs – if he gives me 21 of 27 for 180 to 220 yards passing every week and 1 touchdown with 0 interceptions, I think this team can beat everyone else on the roster. I just watched Georgia barely beat an Auburn team that got hosed quite a bit because a whole touchdown was taken off the board. So our schedule, it's going to be interesting. Honestly, the team that scares me the most at this point is A&M, but we have a long way to go before we play them. Those could be 2 completely different teams by the time that comes around. So take care of business this week versus Kentucky, be able to run the ball like you did versus Oklahoma, be able to stop the run, and I'm going to be very excited about the prospects of this team going forward.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about the schedule in just a bit, but Texas could go into the bye, 5-2 or 7-2, right? Like you go into the bye week, legitimately in a top 3 spot and needing to just take care of business in the last 3 games to play for an SEC championship in a year where we were burying them 7 days ago. You and I were burying this team, so it's wild how quickly things can turn out. You have to be aware that taking too much from the Red River game, it's always kind of a weird situation, but I think we saw enough of things that should be able to be repeated on multiple days that, this might not be as much of an anomaly as it normally is, but I think you're absolutely right. Like going into the bye ahead of Georgia 7-2 is a really good feeling.
No, 100%. If we can get there, it'll feel really good. And this is the thing. I said before the Florida and Oklahoma games, I think those are the 2 best fronts we're going to play all year. I still stand by that. There's no one left on our schedule that I've watched. Like, yeah, I think they could beat maybe A&M a little bit, but even then, I don't think they're as good as they were last year up front. No. So I think Nick Brooks is going to get settled in nicely with, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Vandy, because no offense to those teams, they don't have the defensive lines that we just faced. He just faced his hardest test and played pretty well in the game. So it's going to be interesting how we do going down to Lexington. It's not – listen, Kentucky is the worst team in the SEC, but they're going to provide some fight. This is going to be a team that's going to fight, that bar room type fight where they want to drag you outside, make it bloody. They want to make it ugly. That's what they want to do. And if they can make you play that way, they can beat you. They almost beat Ole Miss earlier in the year, and I think Ole Miss is overrated, but they're still a top 20 team in the country, no matter how you slice it. So they can definitely compete with us, and that's my concern is, can we get out to a hot start? We've yet to do that. If we do that in this game, I'm going to feel really good if it's 10-0, because then, like you said, we kind of found the edge stuff. If that's going well, we can release the edges on this really bad passing attack. But if they're able to just run the football consistently and stay within that for a long period of time, it could be an interesting game. You're muted.
I mean, sorry, my kid was screaming in the background.
Oh,
but I think it's like they're almost the antithesis of what Texas had against Oklahoma, where like Texas was able to say, okay, like Oklahoma cannot run the ball. John Mateer is their offense. Let's figure that out. I think again, like you said, if Texas can get out to a 2-score lead, that shifts the game completely, because Texas has the guys to play a pass, especially like Zach they've like Calzada maybe should have medically retired a couple of years ago. Like there's a lot of conversation around that. Like, they don't have the horses to put up that kind of comeback. Again, Mississippi State, on the other hand, like in 2 weeks, they probably do, but that's a different game for a different time. But like, as we look at what Texas did versus OU, I think they can run a similar recipe in that game to what they did against Oklahoma. Now, like you said, the offense probably, we don't want to see the offense sputter as early as they did, but if you look at what Texas did in the second half, I think that's a recipe for what the offense can do. If they can do that against most of the teams on the schedule, the rest of the teams on the schedule, I think it's going to work out pretty well.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be interesting because, Sark had that issue, the third quarter issue his first year. That was the biggest thing, and that might have been the best third quarter we've ever seen from one of his teams here versus Oklahoma. And, it's been inconsistent in the first quarter of games, and we haven't been able to score on first drive, so he's got to figure that one out. That's like the number one thing that we still haven't figured out here, because even the penalties, we didn't commit many penalties, especially after the first drive. But what do we have? 4 in the game, and we had 2 in the first 4 or 5 plays. So really good, clean game. We finally got that part down. Again, this is the type of team that has to win on the margin, so that's what I'm going to be interested to see.
3 of the 4 accepted penalties were on the first drive.
Yeah, that first drive was horrendous. When I saw that, I was like, oh my God, this is really what we're going to do for this game, because it looked like every other Texas game offensively, and I did not want to watch that for 4 quarters versus Oklahoma.
You know how bad that the first couple of series were for Texas? So on the game, their average down and distance to go on third down was 9.2. If you take away their first 2 third downs, which were 23 and 30, it drops down to 6.8. Like, that's how bad that first quarter was for Texas. It's nuts. Like, let's flush that one. Everything else is fine.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I think Oklahoma is like an 8-4 football team. The problem is when we go up against Georgia on the road, if you have that first quarter, you could be down 17-0 and the game could be over. So you just have to stop the disastrous starts. That's the issue, is that when we're bad, guys, we're really bad. When we're good, we're really good. Can we find a happy medium? Because you can find a happy medium on offense and just stay consistent. Like we said, the defense is good enough to carry this football team.
Yeah, just don't suck. That's all. Just don't suck. That's all we need.
Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. And let's jump into this. Predicting the rest of the Texas season. So we kind of, talked about it a little bit last week of, hey, what do we think? We didn't go game by game, but we're going to go game by game. We will skip the Kentucky game because we're going to get in that later. So we'll just jump ahead to Mississippi State. Gerald, how do you feel about that football game right now as it sits today?
It's again, if Texas shows up like they did against Oklahoma, I feel okay, right? Mississippi State is going to test Texas in a different way than I think everybody else will. They've got that deep shot down the field. We know what that kind of Bryles adjacent offense looks like. And so they've got speed. I think that's the one thing that concerns me, is they've got some speed that can really test the top of this defense. And I don't know if we've seen what the safeties can really do when pressed like that. Now, Ohio State did some of that, and it was good and bad. It had some good spots, had some bad spots. So like that, to me, I think Texas, that's another game where I think Texas can really assert itself defensively. I don't think Mississippi State has the offensive line to keep Texas's edges at bay. So like that's where the advantage shifts. Again, if Manny Muhammad is healthy, I feel pretty solid, because Texas probably can do a lot of things schematically. Again, Pete Kwiatkowski really does like to get some exotic looks in there and things that you're not normally going to see. So I feel okay. Again, the big question for me is, Brendan Thompson's a guy who, flamed out at Texas and Oklahoma, but really found an offense that works for Mississippi State and is playing really, really well. They've got a lot of speed that can test the top of the defense. So will Texas's safeties hold up? I think they will, but we just haven't seen them tested like that yet.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit different than Florida. They're going to want to attack down the field, but they're going to want to do it with speed. They don't have a Dallas Wilson to go up and get those 50-50 balls. I actually think they're not Ohio State schematically, but they're going to attack like Ohio State down the field a little bit more, try for those deep shots. And like you said, Brendan Thompson, this is a revenge game for him. He is talented enough to get behind our guys, so we have to be weary of that. And Blake Shapin's a good enough quarterback to deliver that. He's been really good this year. His issue is health. Like, if he's healthy, he's a very good quarterback, and he's healthy right now. So I expect him to give our defense a challenge. I saw a couple clips from the OU game that were concerning where if you look one way, our safeties kind of bite very hard on that. And if they do that in this game, I'm worried because Blake Shapen is much better at reading a defense and delivering down the field than John Mateer was. So that could hurt us. Overall, their run game isn't great. It's okay. Like you said, their offensive line, not great. It's okay. And defense, they are better, but they're still, again, nothing special there. So to me, it's containing the deep ball. If you make this team have to go down the field slowly and steadily, I think you're going to beat Mississippi State. If they're hitting 2 to 3 explosives on you in this game that are going for touchdowns, then you can start to get in a track meet and you start to play in their hands, and that really does worry me.
Yeah, but one thing that we've seen consistently from Pete Kwiatkowski is limiting the deep balls, right? Outside of maybe Michael Penix going supernova in the college football playoff, like I haven't seen this Pete Kwiatkowski defense give up a ton of massive plays. Where again, I think back to Ohio State in the playoffs last year, like that's how Ohio State, that was their bread and butter, was deep shots, getting those wide receivers going downfield and chunking off big plays, and that they weren't able to really do that against Texas. So I've never really seen a Pete Kwiatkowski defense outside of, like I said, that CFP against Michael Penix, and one of the best games I've ever seen from a quarterback period, be able to give up those types of plays. So I think schematically that really does lean into what Pete Kwiatkowski likes to do. He'll let you, again, if you want to go down the field, he's not going to let you do that. He's going to put a lid on it, keep everything in front of you, take away some of those easy deep balls, and make you nickel and dime him to death. And generally, once those types of teams end up in the red zone, then the advantage swings significantly to the defense.
No, 100%. Let's move on to Vanderbilt, which it's kind of interesting because I think there's some similarities between Vanderbilt and Oklahoma in the way they run their offense, because they kind of have, no offense, a gimmicky quarterback. That's kind of how I look at John Mateer and Diego Pavia. These guys aren't going to be high level or even good NFL quarterbacks, but they're going to be good college quarterbacks. And they get the ball out quickly. They run screens, obviously run counter for the quarterback, power from the quarterback, stuff like that. I actually think what scares me is Eli Stowers. We don't really, and we haven't faced an elite tight end. I'm interested to see how our linebackers hold up in coverage, because this guy that's going to get drafted probably in the 2nd or 3rd round as an NFL tight end, one of the best tight ends in the country. So it's going to be interesting how they handle that. But it's the first game at home in over a month. I think the guys will be ready to play coming home for the first time in that long. But this game is interesting to me. That's the word for it for me. I don't know what to expect in this game. Like I said, with the Vanderbilt offense, I will say I think we'll be more prepared than we were last year, because you're going to have more film on this offense. It's a very weird offense. Not many teams run this style of offense. So I like it more than I did a couple weeks ago, honestly, but it's still up in the air for me.
I mean, it's the off-script stuff that gets Vanderbilt and Pavia going, and that to me, if we see Texas play defense like they did against Oklahoma, I feel okay about it. If they play defense like they did against Florida, I'm going to have nightmares, because the big issue with Florida was them kind of letting the edges be soft and not really containing the quarterback. If you keep Pavia within the pocket, or you keep Pavia from scrambling and doing some of the weird things he can do, and kind of just making space and keeping himself alive until Stowers pops open or one of his other receiving threats, like if you can keep him in the pocket, like I think you've got his number. But that is, again, we've got evidence on both of those sides of this Texas defense. So if Texas is able to play and create a solid, like a set of bookends, for lack of a better term, for Pavia, I feel pretty solid about what Texas can do there. And ultimately, again, if Texas, I don't think the Vanderbilt defense is going to have much to say about Texas, especially the running game there. I think Texas will be able to have another pretty good game there. So, if Texas can really control the pace, control the clock, keep Vanderbilt from doing too many of those flashy, insane things, I feel pretty okay about it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because they really want to control the tempo of the game. That's like their thing. That's why they beat Alabama the first time when they played last year, because I think the time of possession was 42-18,
Yeah,
and they still
wild.
barely won that football game. That's how they beat you. Like they just hold on to the ball, convert third downs, and if you stop them on third downs, you're able to get a lead. And like you said, make him a pocket passer, contain him in the pocket, similar to John Mateer. You can beat him. So I think it's actually going to be probably a similar game plan to what they did versus Oklahoma. So that
Yeah.
gives me, a little bit of hope there compared to a couple weeks ago. We get a bye week, and then what everyone thinks or was the hardest game on the SEC schedule, the hardest game possibly on the whole schedule, it's Georgia in Athens. I think, a little bit of shine has come off them because of what you've seen. But listen, guys, they didn't play that well last year, and then they beat the tar out of Texas for what the first half of that football game was insane to watch. I mean, they dominated us. I think we had 10 yards of total offense in a half. So that does concern me that we just have a Georgia problem to get over. But this team we're able to get this team. I fully believe that if we play up to our standard, hopefully, but it's going to be hard. I mean, there's been one team the last, 4 or 5 years that have beat Georgia at home, and that was Alabama this year. So, and they did that with precision passing from Ty Simpson behind a really good offensive line. So we can't replicate that. It's going to be very interesting going into this game.
Yeah, I mean, Ty Simpson is probably the best, if not top 2 quarterback in the country behind a really good offensive line. And Texas doesn't have either of those things at this point. Like, can Arch be that? Possibly. Can this Texas offensive line be that? I don't know. So that is the big question, because I think Texas is really going to have to try to get creative and take advantage, because I mean, the matchup I'm watching, this isn't this isn't 2 years ago Georgia defensive line, but it's still Georgia's defensive line against a Texas offensive line that got beat pretty badly physically a week ago. And so that's the thing that I really got my eye on. And it still scares me. It scared me going into the year. Still scares me now, in spite of what we've seen against Georgia, because Georgia has been susceptible. We saw it against Missouri as well, right? Or Alabama. We saw Alabama and Missouri go back and forth, right? Like these teams are able to beat you like with a good quarterback, able to sit in the pocket, read the defense, and deliver the ball. That's not necessarily what Texas has been able to do. Now, I would be interested to see what Texas does running the quarterback, because we saw Auburn have some success running Jackson Arnold, the guy that they ran Dylan Gabriel off for, Jackson Arnold. We saw Jackson Arnold have some success with his feet, despite getting screwed over on a touchdown But like we saw them have a scheme to get that done. And so I'm curious to see what Sark. I think it's going to take a different offensive attack from Sark. I think probably if we're looking at the last half of the season, I think if Texas is going to be successful against Georgia, the offense is probably going to look pretty different than it does the other 11 weeks.
Yeah, I agree. To beat them, I think you have to run more of, like, look at the teams that have been successful over the years. It's guys that can run the football at the quarterback position. Haynes King took him in 9 overtimes. You see other guys that are able to run around the pocket, create time. Jackson Arnold, like you said, pretty good. Almost, I mean, if he scores that touchdown, they go up 17-0. There's a good chance we're talking. Yeah, I think they beat Georgia. So I do agree. I think we're gonna have to run Arch 10 to 15 times in this game. It is what it is if you want to go down there and beat them. So I don't know if we're going to do that. At the end of this, we'll let you know if we think Texas can run the table or what we think their record will be. Next up, we have Arkansas at home. Obviously, a really big rivalry game for them. It is a rivalry for us, but it's just not as big. They make it way bigger deal than we do. I think offensively, this team is very, very good. They put up points versus whoever they play other than Notre Dame, and that was clearly Sam Pittman on the way out. They fired him, the next day, and you saw what they did versus Tennessee this week. They're going to put up points. Can we put up 24, 20? I think this might be the one game where I'm like, we may have to go over that 20-point threshold that I talked about. Can we get to 24 in this game? His offense is really good. Bobby Petrino knows what he's doing. Taylor Green is a good quarterback, and they have weapons on the outside. So this game's going to be, I think, a little bit more difficult than Texas fans want it to be.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult showing for them. And I think, Petrino probably really wants this game. Petrino was auditioning for the job. And so I think if he can go into Austin and beat Texas, that's a pretty big feather in his cap as he tries to get this job back full time. And so I think he's going to pull out all the stops. I think this is going to be a game that Texas fans are. Last year was sweaty for a lot of reasons. And I think this one's going to be just the same. I think Texas can do what it needs to do in this game. I think Texas probably has the ability to put up some points on this Arkansas defense. defense, but I think they're going to have to put up points in a number that we haven't seen elsewhere this season, where they're going to be in the, like you said, 24. I think it may even be 28 or 35 points that they need to put up in this game. Now, that's not saying anything bad about the Texas defense. Arkansas is one of the greatest half teams of all time. This is a really good offense attached to a really bad defense. And so you're going to need to put up some points to get it done.
No, 100%. Let's move on to the last game, obviously, in Austin versus Texas A&M, a team, I mean, honestly, at this point with the schedule they have, they could be undefeated coming down to Austin. So very interesting what happens in this football game. Again, I kind of see Texas A&M is a more pumped up version of Arkansas. I think they're just as good, if not better, offensively, but they are average defensively or even good. They're not great defensively, but they are good enough, especially with the weapons they have on the outside with Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion. Marcel Reed is good at hitting the downfield shots, kind of struggles in the intermediate game, and I think Texas will try to force him into those types of throws. But this game does, again, worry me on our side for the defense. I think we'll be able to move the ball a little bit on their defense, but I don't know how much. Very interesting. It's funny, though, because looking at the schedule, I think Texas is going to be favored from here on out in every game, including this one, other than Georgia. So that may surprise me, but I do think that's going to happen. And I think we're in for a dogfight in this game.
Yeah, I mean, I said it preseason, and I think we have a very strong case of it pairing itself out. Like, this game at the end of the year is going to be a playing game for the SEC championship. I think even if Texas loses to Georgia, I think with just the way the SEC is this year, if Texas beats Texas A&M, they probably have a shot, if the chips fall the right way. So ultimately, I think for Texas in this game, it's like, how can you handle the explosive plays? I think this is going to be a battle of haymakers. It's going to be a heavyweight fight where both teams are going to have to throw some of their big stuff to get it done, because A&M is one of the more explosive offenses in the country. They've also benefited, I think, from playing some teams that maybe can't move the ball as well or as consistently offensively. I mean, you look at their wins, right? 41-40 over Notre Dame, right? That's a completely different game if a quarterback doesn't, fumble an extra point, right? Like 16-10 over Auburn. Like, Auburn's not a great offense or a great defense, and really that game came down to the wire as well. So like A&M is a very gettable team, but they've always done enough to get it done. So like that's the thing that you have to watch here is, how do you respond? How do you put this team down? Now, it being in Austin, I think is a feather in our cap. I think if it's a College Station, I'm super duper scared. I'm worried about this game because it's a rivalry game. And again, I think it's a shot if A&M can get in the first the SEC championship game by beating Texas, that team is going to be on 11 for that game. So that, to me, it's the one to watch.
No, 100%. So I got to pose the question to you. The rest of the way, what does Texas end the season at? What's the record?
I mean, I think I had them at 10-2, to start the year. Getting in the CFP as an at-large. I think that's still very much in the books. I honestly probably feel more like a 9-3 is probably closer to where I would sit. I don't know who it is. It's probably either Georgia or A&M. I'd prefer it be Georgia than A&M, if I'm being honest with you. But I think if based on what we saw against Florida and how like everybody had left this team for dead, being able to come out and finish this season 9-3, I think feels like a good outing. I think that's probably, if I had to put a bet on it, that's probably where I'd go now.
Yeah, that's where I'd go. So I think 9-3. I don't know where the loss is going to come, but I do think we're going to lose another game. I just think we're not a consistent enough team. Like, they could prove me wrong. Like, if we go and destroy Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt, then I'll change my tune. I think we can run the table. But until that happens, I'm just going to go 9-3. And honestly, for Texas fans, you're rooting for beating Georgia and A&M and losing a game you probably should. Because I think if you do that, there's a chance you're in the SEC championship game. 1. 2, I think you're probably in the college football playoff with the year that I've seen around college football at 9-3 and wins over Georgia, A&M, Oklahoma, Vanderbilt. That'd be 4 ranked wins. There's not going to be many teams with 4 ranked wins. So you're kind of, if you want us to make the playoffs, you're kind of hoping the loss comes to probably like Arkansas or this week to Kentucky or Mississippi State. I don't want to lose to Kentucky. I'm saying that right now. I want Texas to run the table, but I'm thinking, how could we get an SEC championship game? How could we get in the college football playoff? Because the tiebreakers are going to come to Georgia and A&M. They just are. You're not going to have a tiebreaker with Kentucky. You're not going to have a tiebreaker with Mississippi State. And you're not going to have a tiebreaker with Arkansas.
Yeah, and I think even of those two, I think of the team, like you look at A&M's schedule, and A&M gave us some grief about like having a soft schedule. But I think that probably A&M is going to benefit a little bit from some soft. But I think, they're losable games on A&M schedule, right? They've got LSU in a couple of weeks. They've got Missouri. They've got South Carolina still on the boards. Like, those are teams that could very well jump up and ruin somebody's season. So, like, it's all in all possible that, like, beating either one of these teams, like, you get it on the strength of a head-to-head win over Georgia or A&M. So I think, like, if you split those games, that's probably obviously you want to win them both, but, like, if you're going to lose one, frankly, like, you don't want to. There's a lot left to be said about it, but I think, like, Georgia's still infinitely gettable on their schedule. I think A&M has some losable games still in this back half of the schedule for them as well. It's going to be weird. It's going to be fun. But again, I think 9-3 still probably gets them at least in the conversation for the CFP.
No, 100%. So we both agree 9-3. Let us know in the comments, guys, what you guys think. Is 9-3 the most likely outcome for Texas the rest of the year at the end of the year? Please hit that like button, subscribe. Let's jump into some comments real quick before we move on to the next topic. David Keith Williams, Arkansas is averaging 36 points per game on offense and are giving up. Yeah, I mean, like Gerald said, very good offensively, very bad defensively. Like, Texas should be able to put up 28 just rolling out of bed first in that game. They really should. They have the weapons. You should be able to run the ball versus that front. And then you just have to hold them, to under 28 points, hopefully. That's the goal.
38-35 is a win, right?
Yeah. Corey Peacock said, "What's up, guys? I want to see a win in Austin against the Aggies. Yeah, 100%. Do not want to lose to them at home, especially if that puts them in the SEC championship game. Yeah, I don't want to deal with that.
Not at all."
David Keith Williams says, Alabama created a blueprint for beating Georgia. Quick, efficient throws to the running backs and wide receivers on the perimeter, and those weapons making the linebackers miss consistently kept the Georgia defense off balance. I agree with that. My issue is I think Arch can hit that now. I have confidence in that. I've seen it enough. We don't have the playmakers at the wide receiver position or running back position that Alabama does. We just don't. We don't have Jamarion Miller. I think he's better than anything we have at the running back position. And I would definitely trade Ryan Williams for Ryan Wingo, and Jeremy Bernard is the most underrated wide receiver in the country. That guy's going to be a second-round NFL pick, and no one talks about him. So that's the bonus of having them. Like, I think Ryan Wingo could catch those and break some tackles. Parker Livingston hasn't shown me, like, breaking tackle ability yet. He's able to run away from people, but can he break the tackles when people get to him? I don't know.
Yeah, Texas has the explosive playmakers, but Texas hasn't consistently made people miss, right? You think about the one time we've seen Ryan Niblett do that was on that punt return, right, where he made people miss. We've seen Parker Livingston, like you said, run away from people. DeAndre Moore has shown a little bit of wiggle, but he hasn't really done a ton of that. Ryan Wingo, we've seen it in flashes, but we haven't seen it consistently. I mean, honestly, of the folks that we talk about in this, like in, DKW, I'm going to call you on your comment, right? Like, Quintravian Weisner is the guy that we've seen that does that the most, where he turned chicken salad into chicken salad on Saturday against Oklahoma, made some guys miss and converted a first down. It's like that might be something, and folks are going to get mad because folks are really frustrated about some of those quick passes and the screens and all of that didn't really work well. But like we've seen Texas operate in that quick game pretty well because they did it against Oklahoma to minimize and kind of hide some of the deficiencies of the offense.
Yeah, 100%. Corey, y'all hold Baxter out another week? Yeah, I do. If you need CJ Baxter to beat Kentucky, we don't even need to discuss the rest of the season. That just says it in and of itself if you need CJ Baxter to beat Kentucky. Like I said, guys, I think you have Alabama up here, you have Kentucky down here, and literally 2 through 15 could beat each other any week. That's how I feel about the SEC. So yeah, you should be able to beat Kentucky without CJ Baxter.
100%, without a doubt.
Texas needs to win their remaining games. However, if they lose a game, it should be at Georgia, and the loss should be very close, maybe even an overtime loss like the SEC title game last year. Yeah, I think for the playoff, I think if you lose to Georgia, it basically eliminates you from the SEC championship game at that point because it would probably be Alabama and then Georgia or A&M. I don't because that's a tiebreaker. But I agree, like – I mean, I don't know. I still feel like beating A&M and Georgia is the best scenario and then losing to either Mississippi State, Kentucky, or Arkansas. If you're guaranteeing me a loss. Again, that's only if you're guaranteeing me a loss. If you're not, win out. That's what I have to say.
I mean, winning out puts you in the conference championship game. But, again, I think I'm leaning more towards the comment here because folks are going to give Georgia, like losing to Georgia still has some mystique to it, right? Like I think like that's one of those, oh yeah, well, they lost to Georgia, right? Everybody loses to Georgia because it's Georgia. They still get that Georgia bump in a loss. So there's some merit to that thought for sure.
100%. Let's go to this. Speaking of running backs, who can be running back to for this Texas team? This is a question because I don't know when CJ Baxter's going to be back. If CJ Baxter's back, then he's running back 1 or 2 if he's healthy. Problem is, we knew in the season, I didn't think he'd be healthy at all. He came back way healthier than I thought. Then he pulled his hamstring. So honestly, at this point, from what I've seen, I think the guy that just returned for the punt for the touchdown should get a little bit more run at the running back position. I think Ryan Niblett should get his due at the running back position. Steve Sarkisian talked about it this week. Hey, he's a guy that I convinced to stay. I convinced he's going to have a role on this team. And the role has been small, and he's done a pretty good job. But I'd like to see it expanded here because they clearly do not trust Jared Gibson. My guess is if Jarrett Gibson is fumbling in games, he's probably fumbling in practice, which in turn leads to him not playing football for us. So then I saw Christian Clark, and hasn't been as explosive as I wanted him to be. James Simon probably knows very little of the playbook, and a lot like freshmen coming out of high school probably isn't very good at pass protection. So I think Ryan Niblett should get some run at running back too.
Yeah, I think this is a weird position to be in because you expect CJ Baxter to be the guy for you. It's just not. It hasn't been that thing because he's been injured. And again, the guy's, injury prone, right? We have to put that tag on him at this point because he's 3 for 3 on being injured all 3 years. So, I think it seems like James Simon is the guy that the coaches of that running back room trust the most after Kertwavian Wisner, because like you said, Jarrett Gibson, like I want that guy to find a place to thrive because I really like him as a person, as a player, but it's just not going to happen at Texas. Christian Clark, again, is a guy who I think could have a role if Texas needs a guy to kind of pound it in short yardage, especially when CJ Baxter is injured. So James Simon seems like the guy that the coaches want to be that guy ultimately, at least as things progress. But my question with Niblett is like, how does he fit into the zone running scheme that Texas wants to run, right? Ryan Niblett at this point is not, and that's no fault of his own. He's kind of a jack of all trades. He's a Swiss Army knife, right? He can do a lot of those things. So, I don't know how he fits into the every down, like running the zone stuff. And so if you can get, this is a week where I think your running back coach needs to really earn his keep and get the freshman to a point where he can identify and find a seam in your zones and he can identify and make those plays. If you can find a way to get James Simon even 10% better than he was on Saturday, he can take some of that the wear and tear that you're putting on Trey Wisner, because I don't want to see Trey Wisner continue to have 20 and 25 touches a game. He could probably do it, and he would probably be mad at me for saying it, but like Texas is going to need him deeper in the year, especially if CJ Baxter cannot keep his body right. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know what the issue is, but like Texas needs another guy. So it's got to be James Simon at this point, at least based on what we've seen on the field.
Yeah, we're 6 games into the year, and Arch Manning is still the leading rusher of this football team. And guys, remember, this is taken into account of sacks, and look how many times he's been sacked. So he would be the leading rusher by quite a bit of margin if this was NFL statistics. He'd probably be – Trey Wisner right now has 185 yards on 4 yards per carry, which is really bad. 4 yards per carry is not good. And Arch Manning has 194. So if we took out sacks, we're probably talking 300. He probably has 115 more rushing yards than the running back, the leading rusher on our team. So we have to find someone else. And, yeah, it's going to be interesting because, like I said – is the zone running here to stay? Is outside zone here to stay? We've incorporated it more. It did really well versus Oklahoma, but is that because of Oklahoma and the way, they jump gaps and everything like that and rotate a lot before the snap on the defensive line? That's the reason that kind of works very well versus them. So I'm wondering if we stick with that, if we go back to power with gap. I don't know. It's going to be interesting how this run game is just handled in general, how it's called.
Mm-hmm. And the Arch Manning being the leading rusher thing is like a bit of a I don't want to say false narrative, but like Trey Wisner missed 3 games where he probably would have padded his stats pretty significantly, right? And so like that, like he had averaged 5 yards per carry against Ohio State, 16 for 80 in that game, 22 for 94 against Oklahoma. So like it's hard for me to fault him for coming off of a significant injury, coming back, playing in the swamp in bad weather on grass behind an offensive line that's playing like absolute trash. So like I think Trey Wisner is probably closer to what we saw against Ohio State and Oklahoma than what we saw against Florida. And that, I mean, that there's a lot of evidence from last year that gives me that confidence in saying that as well. And so I think he'll be okay, right? And I think Arch will not have to be the battering ram. Much like, again, it's not going to be an Oklahoma situation where John Mateer is the only thing. I think Trey Wisner is finally starting to feel himself. His mom's putting it out there on social media that they haven't forgotten the people that were taking shots at them like that. Again, I'm fine with that. And Trey Wisner is the guy. And I think he can be the guy. We've seen him be the featured back in this offense. Now, do we want to be in that situation again next year? I love Trey Wisner, and that guy should never have to buy a drink again in Austin. But I think next year, if CJ Baxter can't stay healthy, Texas needs to go in the portal and grab another guy, because at this point, you can't rely on a freshman to come in and bail you out every year.
No, that's true. I do think Derek Cooper's a freak, though. So that's going to be interesting if he does stay here. Like, I do think that guy can make a really big impact as a freshman. And Corey asked, do you feel we have the offense rushing thing solved or not? Because I don't see it. I don't see it either right now, because, guys, we've had 6 games. I've seen him be really good in one game. I can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to focus on the one game. No, I have 5 samples of data and I have 1 sample of data. Right now, I have to go with the 5. Now, over the next couple of weeks, if we run the ball well versus Kentucky, if we run the ball well versus Mississippi State, if we run the ball well versus Vanderbilt, then I'll believe it, because I'm going to take what I've seen recently also over what I saw, first couple of weeks, because I can just write that off and say, hey, that was early on. We were figuring things out. We've been placed Nick Brooks. Maybe that helps out a lot. But again, we have to find another pitch. Right now, Trey Wisner is a good fastball, but where's our curveball? Where's our slider? All that. We need someone else. Even last year, we had Jaden Blue help out a little bit. We don't have anyone helping out right now. It literally will be Trey Wisner and nobody else.
And it's hard, again, I don't like saying it's one game, because do we agree that Ohio State is a good defense? Like, do we think that Ohio State has a good defense?
Oh, yeah, very good. Yes.
I mean, Trey Wisner averaged 5 yards a carry on that defense. Texas as a team averaged 4.5 yards per carry on that team, right? And Arch, got sacked several times in that game, and only chipped in 38 yards up in that one. So, like, I like I said, I think the Texas running game is closer to what we saw against Ohio State and what we saw against Oklahoma than what we saw against Florida. That's just really like where I'm going to put my flag in the sand there. Are they going to be an elite running group? No, that's not going to be what this offense is. But do I think that we can depend on them, on Trey Wisner, to get 85 to 100 yards a week? I think so. But like you said, who's the second guy? Who's the guy that can grab 10 or 12 carries and get 40 or 60 yards? Like, that's what Texas needs right here.
Yeah, because if we'll just run him into the ground, and by the time we actually play games that matter, if we do win out, like, he's not going to be the same type of runner. He's going to run out of juice. You can't give that guy 25 carries, 30 carries every week, because his body's not built for it. So we do have to find a running mate here. I agree. If it's like not the outside of Ryan Niblett, then I think it will be James Simon, because I thought Christian Clark would come back a little bit better. He hasn't. Jared Gibson, like we said, is pretty much done here. I don't think he's going to play a significant role ever at Texas. And then I think James Simon probably has the most use, and he's good out of the backfield as well catching. That was actually something he was known for coming out of high school. So I think that's the guy you kind of have to rely on.
Yeah, and I wonder if Texas goes more like max protect, like 12 personnel on a passing play to compensate for the fact that Trey Wisner is a willing blocker, but he's not always the most capable blocker. And then Simon, again, you never want to depend on a freshman to be your protector for your quarterback in a pass scheme like that. So I wonder if Texas goes a little more two tights and some passing sets to compensate for that. Again, when CJ Baxter is back, if he gets back, he's the guy you want on third downs. But again, we don't know when he'll be back, and if he does get back, how long he'll be back for.
No, 100%. I mean, that play that comes to my mind is Arvell Reese came up the middle, and CJ Baxter was going to go out to the right and then turned back and blew him up. Like, guys, go watch what Arvell Reese is doing for Ohio State right now. He's going to be a first-round pick at linebacker. Like, I just watched him versus Illinois. Literally stiff arm, just straight armed a guy back as a tackle, as a linebacker. He has like 60 pounds. He's 60 pounds less, and he's doing that to an offensive tackle. And CJ Baxter blew that guy up and allowed time for Arch Manning. So he's a phenomenal pass blocker.
Yeah. And I wonder if they sit CJ Baxter for a couple of extra games. Like you said, I don't think you need him for Kentucky. Like if he's healthy, you may give him a healthy scratch this week and then bring him back for Mississippi State, or even you sit him. Again, it depends on how you feel about Mississippi State. I'd like to see him against Mississippi State because I want to see Texas probably run the ball more heavy in that matchup. So like you sit him, he's a healthy scratch against Kentucky, or you get him, a couple of carries against Kentucky, and then get him back fully in the rotation for Mississippi State.
No, I completely agree. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. And let's jump over to this. So Kentucky opens as a 12.5-point underdog at home. Wildcats coming off a bye. They are 2-3 on the year, 0-3 in the SEC. And points per game, guys, offensively, 24.4. That is 94th in the country. Opponents' points per game, 96th in the country at 27.8. So they're bad on both sides of the football. They had Zach Calzada at the beginning of the year. They have completely turned on him, and they are actually going with Cutter Boyley, who I was pretty impressed with when he came into the game versus Texas last year. And Kentucky kind of hung around in that game, which was concerning for me, but they did. So we'll see what they do at the quarterback position this week. Do they stick with Cutter Boyley? Do they go with Zach Calzada? I don't know. Rushing, guys, Seth McGowan. I bet Oklahoma wishes they had him back because he's pretty good for Kentucky. 431 yards rushing, 5.5 yards per carry. He also has 4 receptions for 26 yards out of the backfield. So very good running back for them. And then Dante Dowdle, 56 attempts, 247 yards, 4.4 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. And Seth McGowan has 7 touchdowns on the ground. So this is a team that loves to run the football. Obviously, Mark Stoops, play good defense, run the ball, time of possession game. That's what he wants to do. He wants to make this a bar fight. So that's how you have to stop this team. You're going to have to stop the run. Gerald, what do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think much like we saw with talk about with Arkansas, this is a really solid to good offense and a defense that's giving up more than 4 points per opportunity. So they're not necessarily going to shut you down all that much. I mean, this is a battle to me that's going to be won in the trenches. When you look at Kentucky, they're averaging more than 3 line yards per rush, meaning their offensive line is generating more than 3 yards per rush, while their defense is giving up about 3 line yards per rush. So it's going to be a battle to me that's won and lost in the trenches for Texas. They're really susceptible to explosive passing plays is something that you've seen them give up quite a bit. When you look at the advanced stats, they're giving up and again, advanced stats are always weird to try to explain, but when they complete a pass, when a pass is completed against them, they give up 1.5 points per completed pass. So they're giving up a ton of points on those big plays. So I think there's some opportunities for Texas to try to go at them with some chunk plays, try to control the line of scrimmage. And then we've said get rid of the play action pass. I'm fine with it in the pistol, just don't do it under center, right? So I think there's some opportunities to really kind of pound the ball a little bit, lean on them a little bit, and then generate some explosive plays with these playmakers, because when push comes to shove, it's a Jimmy's and Joe's game. And I think Texas has a significant Jimmy's and Joe's advantage in this. And so I would take Texas athletes one-on-one in these games. Now, will Arch Manning trust himself? Will the offensive line be able to hold up? Those are the things that I think we really want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They may give up explosive plays, but the problem is, can Texas hold up enough to create those explosive plays? And that's been the question all year. They've been there. Go watch the Florida tape. Just cut out the offensive line and the quarterback running for his life. Those guys are running behind Florida's cornerbacks and safeties, but that's an issue if you can't get them the ball. So that's the thing with Sark. It has to be a delicate balance. I thought last week we were ultra conservative because we knew how good the Oklahoma defensive line was. Guess what? I don't need you to be that conservative, but I still like you to lean towards that, because I don't want this to turn into the Oklahoma State game from a couple of years ago with Quinn Ewers, when he was 19 of 49 or something crazy like that, because it was 15 shots down the field. You don't need to do that. Have 3 to 4 planned shots down the field, hit them, and this game will be over. If you hit 3 to 4 planned shots versus Kentucky, and we're talking 40 to 50 yard chunk plays, and then you score off 1 or 2 of them, Kentucky's probably not going to score more than 14 points as a game unless you give them really bad or really good field position via a turnover. Unless you throw an interception, they return it for a pick six. Their offense isn't going to generate 3 scoring drives, in my opinion, in this game. It's not good enough. They don't have enough explosive playmakers on the outside. They're going to rely heavily on the run game, and they're going to want us to beat ourselves. And the only way we do that is if we run out of game plan, similar to Florida, similar to Oklahoma State with Quinn Ewers. Don't get greedy in this game. Take what is given to you. Walk out of this game with a W. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's the way to go about it. Again, I don't want to see Texas move too far from what they did against Oklahoma. Like I think that's Texas's winning formula in this one. It's like, get the ball out of Quinn Ewers' hands quickly. Don't ask him to do a whole lot of having to reconfigure, reposition on motion, on bootlegs, on those types. Like get him out, but like I say bootlegs, like under center type stuff. Like I like Arch rolling out, rolling out to the right on some sprint out type stuff, but like ultimately, like get the ball out of his hands quickly, get the ball into the hands of your playmakers, take advantage. I don't think Texas has the athletes at the offensive line to be really good at the screen game, but I wonder if Texas gets some quick out stuff to Ryan Wingo, some quick out stuff to Ryan Niblett, some quick out stuff to DeAndre Moore, just to to soften up the defense, almost supplement the running game with some of that quick passes, the quick out stuff. And then you have the opportunity to try to hit him deep over the top for something like that. So like that to me is what I would like to see from Texas.
No, 100%. Texas, for whatever reason, doesn't run a lot of mesh. I would start to do that with Ryan Wingo. I don't know why we don't. I think that kind of supplements for the run game a little bit, like you said. I'd like to see some reverses. We have done that a little bit, but not enough, in my opinion. And I think those are the sort of plays I'd like to see. I'd like to see, and I think Stark talked about this, more Jack Endries in this game, more Emmett Mosley. He kind of talked about those two players in the press conference of, hey, we've been really good at, distributing the football, but those are two guys that I think need it more. So I expect him to kind of force the ball to those two guys early, because usually when he brings something like that up unprompted, he kind of does it. So I think you're going to see that. And then get after whoever the quarterback's going to be for Kentucky. Make his life uncomfortable when he does drop back. I don't think Kentucky's going to drop back very often in this game if this game's close. Like if this game's within a touchdown, they're probably going to throw it one every 3 to 4 plays. That's kind of the game plan I see for them. That's another thing. If we get out early on this team, it could get ugly. We could run them out of their own building because they don't have the ability to drop back to pass and generate explosive plays down the field.
Yeah, I think this is going to sound silly, but it almost like on my son's flag football team, right? Like we got up 2 scores early, and I was like, this team can't do anything. So let's just run the ball now. Like let's get the ball, like give everybody a chance to be the running back, everybody a chance to play quarterback. Like get out early and then relax a little bit. Like that is, I think, an opportunity for Texas in this game to build a big early lead. Because again, Kentucky is susceptible to some big explosive plays, and you've got the athlete advantage there. Now, can Arch operate the offense at that level? I don't know, but still, like that's what I want to see is like try to land a couple of big haymakers early, and then you can cruise.
No, 100%. And I think they should come out more aggressive in the sense of running up tempo a little bit more. They seem to do pretty well with that. And Sark talks about, hey, we struggle early on. We'll run it early on, because you don't really run it early on. You run it later in games and it seems to work. So why not try it right off the bat? And again, if you get up 14-0 on Kentucky, this game, unless you do something dumb, the game's over. They're not going to score 17 unanswered points and come back and beat you. So that's my keys. Jump out early, jump out often, and be all gas, no brakes. Doesn't mean be dumb about it. Just be super aggressive in the way you call your defense and offense early on.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you.
So 12.5. Does Texas cover this spread? Do they win the football game? What's your prediction?
Yeah, I think I've got Texas by probably 2 full scores. I think I've got Texas by 14 in this one. So yeah, again, I don't bet, and I'm sure our numbers are terrible. You're going to bring that up here in just a minute, but I think Texas probably has it by 14.
I'm going to go 30-13 Texas. I think Kentucky, we get up like I said, I think we get up early on, like 10-0, kind of cruise the rest of the game. I think Kentucky probably has 6 or 7 points and adds on a late score at the end of the football game. So that's how I see this football game. But again, when you are a favorite in these type of games, end it as soon as possible, because the longer it goes, it favors the team that's not, because they start to believe they can beat you.
And they're at home.
And it gets their confidence up. Yeah, and the crowd is going to be crazy. Like this, the first time Texas has ever been there. They have an underrated atmosphere as it is. Georgia, we've seen consistently go in there and struggle in these games. So get this game over with early.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to, the other games. We usually pick 3 games. Gerald, I did not tally up what we had last week, so I don't know. We'll tally that up at the end of this week, and I'll come back with the results. This week is very interesting in college football. Last week, I thought there were a lot of big football games. This week, not so much. The number one game right here, in my opinion, Ole Miss versus Georgia. So Ole Miss is +7 on the road, which honestly I thought it'd be a little bit more. Over under here is 54.5. How do you see this football game?
Yeah, I don't think this is your grandfather's Georgia. I don't think this is your older brother's Georgia that we saw a couple of years ago, or a couple of years ago. But I think Kirby Smart doesn't like Lane Kiffin, and I think this is a game that he probably gets his team up for. I would probably honestly take Georgia in this one. I think they'll probably win this one pretty handily. I could be wrong. I think Kirby has hearing a lot of chatter around himself, and while coaches always say they don't hear that stuff, Kirby absolutely hears that stuff. And so I think he's probably going to come out and try to prove a point in this one.
I agree. I'm going to take Georgia to roll here. They beat them last year. Ole Miss did at home in a rainy game. Jackson Dart came out a little bit. Simmons came in. Obviously, Trinidad Chambliss is the starting quarterback, played very well. But I think Georgia's going to win this football game rather easily. I think Ole Miss is a very overrated football team. I think LSU was the most overrated. Then when Ole Miss beat them, they just flip-flop, and now Ole Miss is the most overrated team, in my opinion, in the whole country. They are not the fifth best team in the country. I don't know why they're ranked like that. Washington State almost beat them last week, and Washington State is not a good football team. So I'm going to take Georgia to roll in this football game.
I'm with you.
Next up, let's see. Find a good – you know what? Oklahoma and South Carolina. Let's do it. South Carolina is getting 5.5 points at home here. So Oklahoma is favored by 5.5. How do you see this one, Gerald?
Yeah, as much as I want to take South Carolina, I just don't feel like they can consistently do it. Is the only way I can say it. Like, I love Lenore Sellers. Lenore Sellers is a fantastic, but like we haven't seen their wide receivers really make a ton of plays. I think South Carolina has a pretty solid defensive front, and I think that's going to be an interesting challenge for Oklahoma. But ultimately, I really do think that probably Oklahoma has enough for this. Now, Mateer's thumb, he got it bloodied against Texas. So is Mateer's thumb, is he going to continue to struggle to put the ball in right places? Because South Carolina, if you give them extra chances, extra bites at the apple, they're going to score on you. So I think that's something to watch. But ultimately, I really think Oklahoma probably takes this one.
Yeah, I do too. I think the Oklahoma downfall has been a little bit overstated. I still think they're like an 8-4, maybe even 9-3 football team, just because I think there's a log jam in the middle of the SEC, and I think that's right where Oklahoma is. I also think South Carolina, it's Lenora Sellers and a bunch of dudes. That's what it is. They've struggled mightily because of that. They just fired their offensive line coach because their offensive line the last 2 years, I believe last year was 132nd in the country out of 134 teams, and the year before it was 134 out of 134 teams, and I believe it's in the hundreds still. So this Oklahoma front, what just happened versus Texas versus that South Carolina offensive line, which is worse than Texas, after they had to hear a whole week, oh, you guys only got 1 sack, you're not that good. They are going to destroy that South Carolina offensive line. So I'm going to take Oklahoma to win this game actually pretty big. I think they win this game by 10+ points.
I think it's fair.
Last game up, very interesting line, and I'm here for it. Vanderbilt at home noon. Favored by 2.5 points over LSU. LSU, the 10th best team in the country, according to AP. Vanderbilt, the 17th. I'm going Vandy here. I think Vandy wins the football game. I think LSU is the second most overrated team in the SEC. I think, like I said, Ole Miss and LSU are the two most overrated teams. I'm taking Vanderbilt here at home. I think they get a big win. I think LSU's defense is really good. I said this about a month ago on Mark's show that I think LSU and their offense and their defense and offense have flipped. I think LSU's defense is phenomenal. I think their offense is crap. I don't think Garrett Nussmeier is good at all. I think that's been shown. He turns the ball over too much. He doesn't process things well, especially a guy in his 5th year. So I'm going to take Vanderbilt to win this football game and cover this 2.5 point spread.
I think I'm going to, just for the sake of drama, I think I'll probably go LSU in this one. I think just, it's not fun if you and I agree on everything, but I also think, LSU at some point, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, but like something's got to flip for them. And I think there is such a talent disparity, I think for, LSU, not a talent disparity, but I think LSU probably has the horses to play. Again, if it comes down to Jimmy's and Joe's, I think LSU is going to win this one. And I think it's going to be a Jimmy's and Joe's game for me.
I think that's fair. I will say this. So the craze right now is Indiana, right? So I was just curious. So I looked up their roster composite score on 247. Take a guess where they rank in the country talent-wise.
Oh, probably in the 40s.
They're the 72nd ranked talented team in the country.
Wow.
What Kurt Cignetti is doing at Indiana is unprecedented and will never happen again. it's an insane coaching job. He is literally beating teams with JMU football players, which is insane. And when I saw that, because I thought that too, I was going to say 40 to 50 range. I scrolled down and they were 72. They were, guys, Cincinnati is a more talented football team than Indiana.
Yeah. Siggs is doing something, man. I don't know what it is, but he's doing something.
Yeah, it was wild when I saw that. And now I'm interested to go look at Vanderbilt where they rank, but I'll have to check that out because I know LSU's in the top.
It's got to be higher.
Oh, yeah, I would assume Vanderbilt's probably in the 40s range is my guess. Maybe even like mid-30s.
That seems fair.
But it's
insane
SEC, what he's
right?
doing. Yeah, I think the lowest talented team is either them or Kentucky, and they're both like high relative to everyone else. So, again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. We really appreciate that. Every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time and every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, you'll have Brandon and Josh on tomorrow. That is my X account right there. If you want to give me a follow right there on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. This is Gerald's X account, Blue Sky account as well as his Longhorn Pod, which you can check out on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. And as always, guys, hook 'em.
Hook 'em.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.